A young mother's newborn vanished during a hospital power outage. When the truth emerged, she broke down in tears. No one could have imagined what would happen next. A story of resilience and hope that will touch your heart. Welcome back. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy the story. The fluorescent lights flickered above Naomi Parker as she gripped the edges of her hospital bed, the sterile scent of antiseptic filling her nostrils. Outside, thunder crashed as one of the worst storms Indianapolis had seen in decades battered the city. 26 hours of labor had left her exhausted but elated as she cradled her newborn daughter, Olivia, against her chest. "She's perfect," Naomi whispered to her husband, Peter, who gazed down at them both with tears in his eyes. The nurse had taken their daughter to the nursery for standard tests, while Naomi got some much-needed rest. That was 3 hours ago. Now, as the hospital's backup generators hummed in the background, Naomi stared in disbelief at the head nurse who stood at the foot of her bed, her face ashen. "Mrs. Parker, I don't know how to tell you this, but during the power outage, there was confusion in the nursery." The woman's voice quavered. "Your baby is missing." The words hit Naomi like a physical blow, stealing her breath. "What do you mean, missing?" she demanded, her voice rising with each syllable. "How does a baby just go missing from a hospital?" Peter's hand tightened around hers as hospital administrators filed into the room, their faces grave as they spoke. Of an unfortunate incident. The security footage had been corrupted during the power surge. Staff accounts conflicted. No one seemed to know exactly what had happened in those chaotic 30 minutes when the lights went out. "This is unacceptable," Peter shouted, his usually calm demeanor shattered by fear and outrage. "Someone has to know something." But as police officers arrived and the questioning dragged into the early morning hours, it became clear that no one had answers. Only vague explanations and sympathetic glances. Naomi felt hollowed out, as if someone had scooped away her insides, leaving nothing but a shell of who she'd been just hours before. "I don't care what anyone says," she whispered to Peter when they were finally alone, her voice hoarse from crying. "Something isn't right, and I'm going to find out what happened to our daughter." Even as the words left her mouth, Naomi knew with absolute certainty that Olivia was alive. Somewhere, somehow, her baby was out there, and Naomi would move heaven and earth to bring her home. The drive back to their suburban Indianapolis home was silent, the weight of their loss pressing down like a physical presence between them. Naomi stared out the window at the storm-damaged streets, fallen branches and debris scattered across lawns and sidewalks, a perfect reflection of the devastation inside her. Peter kept glancing over at her, his face etched with worry. "The detectives said they'll call as soon as they know anything," he offered, his voice hesitant. Naomi didn't respond. What was there to say? That the police had already written off their daughter as a tragic hospital mishap. That the hospital administrators were more concerned with liability than finding a missing newborn. The moment they stepped through their front door, the carefully prepared nursery mocked them with its cheerful yellow walls and the mobile of stars and moons hanging above the empty crib. Naomi stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move forward or back. Her body still ached from childbirth, milk leaking from her breasts for a baby who wasn't there. Peter suggested they sleep in the guest room that night, but Naomi refused to close the nursery door. "If I close it," she explained, tears streaming down her face, "it's like I'm accepting she's gone. I can't do that, Peter. I won't." The days blurred together as neighbors and friends brought casseroles and sympathy cards. Her mother flew in from Cleveland, hovering anxiously as Naomi spent hours staring at the empty crib or methodically reviewing the hospital paperwork spread across the dining room table. "Honey, maybe it's time to consider grief counseling." Peter suggested one evening, 2 weeks after they'd returned home. The suggestion sparked the first real emotion Naomi had felt in days. "Grief counseling," she repeated, her voice dangerously low. "Our daughter isn't dead, Peter. She's missing. There's a difference." The hurt in his eyes was palpable, but Naomi couldn't bring herself to apologize. How could she explain that accepting help meant accepting loss? And that was something she refused to do. If you are enjoying the story, type 5 in the comments and subscribe for more videos like this. If not, type 0. It helps me create even better content for you. Continuing. The argument that followed was their worst yet, ending with Peter sleeping in the guest room and Naomi crying herself to sleep in their bed, clutching the ultrasound photo of their daughter. But wait, there's something I haven't told you yet. Someone else was watching Naomi that day in Carmel, someone who knew exactly why Patricia Quinn had quit her job and what had really happened during those missing 30 minutes at St. Catherine's Hospital. August brought oppressive heat to Indianapolis, the air thick with humidity as Naomi continued her investigation. Peter had grown more distant with each passing week, working late and avoiding conversations about Olivia. Their home, once filled with laughter and plans for the future, had become a minefield of unspoken accusations and grief. Naomi found herself driving past the hospital daily, taking different routes, observing the comings and goings of staff members. One evening, she noticed a security guard smoking near a service entrance she hadn't seen before. Struck by an idea, Naomi returned the next day wearing scrubs purchased from a medical supply store and carrying a tray of cookies. "Break room. Donation," she explained to the bored security guard, who barely glanced at her ID badge, a crude forgery she'd created using her library's printing resources. Once inside, Naomi navigated the basement corridors, heart pounding as she searched for anything related to the mysterious VIP or special medical equipment Patricia had mentioned. A door marked Archives caught her attention. Inside, filing cabinets lined the walls, organized by date. With trembling fingers, Naomi located the records from June and began photographing everything she could find about the night of the storm. A sound in the hallway sent her ducking behind a cabinet just as the door opened. "I'm telling you, someone's been asking questions," a man's voice said tensely. "First that nurse in Carmel, now someone's been talking to maintenance staff." A second voice responded, lower and calmer. "It's been handled. Besides, the program's been moved. There's nothing to find here anymore." After they left, Naomi remained hidden for what felt like hours, her body rigid with fear and a new emotion: vindication. This wasn't grief-induced delusion. Something had happened at St. Catherine's Hospital, something people in positions of power wanted to keep hidden. When Naomi finally returned home, she found Peter waiting for her, his face pale with worry. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "I've been calling for hours." For a moment, Naomi considered telling him everything: the break-in, the overheard conversation, the mounting evidence that their daughter might still be alive. But the memory of his dismissal, his insistence that she needed help rather than answers, stopped her. "I went for a drive," she said instead. "I needed to clear my head." The distance between them stretched wider that night, a gulf Naomi no longer knew how to bridge. As Peter slept, Naomi taped her photographs to the wall of their home office, connecting them with red string like a detective in a crime movie. There was a pattern here. She just needed to find it. By September, Naomi had transformed their home office into an investigative headquarters. Maps of Indianapolis marked with potential locations, printouts of research on rare blood disorders, and news clippings about St. Catherine's Hospital covered the walls. She'd taken a leave of absence from her job as a high school science teacher, using her meticulous research skills to hunt for any connection between the hospital and specialized medical facilities. The whispers around their suburban neighborhood had intensified. Friends stopped calling, invitations dwindled. Naomi caught neighbors watching her from behind curtains when she collected the mail. Even her mother had started making cautious suggestions about getting help. Only one person seemed to take her seriously: Quentin Foster, a journalist for the Indianapolis Star who specialized in healthcare investigations. They met at a coffee shop downtown, away from the prying eyes of her neighbors. "I've been looking into St. Catherine's for a story on hospital billing practices," Quentin explained, his voice low. "But I keep hitting walls. Sources disappear. Records get redacted." Naomi felt a spark of hope for the first time in months. "So you believe me that something suspicious is happening there?" Quentin's expression was guarded. "Let's say I believe. There are questions worth asking. St. Catherine's is part of the Midwest Health Network, which also runs the Abernathy Research Institute on the north side. They've received massive federal grants for genetic research in the past 5 years." He slid a file across the table. 3 other families have reported similar incidents involving newborns with rare conditions. All were told their babies didn't survive. By the beginning of July, Naomi had established a routine. Each morning she called the police detective assigned to their case, only to be told there were no new leads. Then she would drive to the Central Library downtown, where she spent hours researching similar cases and taking meticulous notes. The librarians knew her by name now, saving newspapers and helping her navigate databases. At night, she returned home to an increasingly distant Peter, who had thrown himself into his work as an architectural engineer. "I found something," Naomi announced one evening as Peter picked at the dinner she'd barely touched. She pushed her hospital discharge papers across the table. "Look at the timestamps. They don't match." Peter reluctantly examined the documents, his brow furrowed. "What am I looking at now?" She pointed to 2 different forms. "This nursing log shows Olivia was taken to the nursery at 10:45 p.m., but I know it was 10:15. I remember looking at the clock when they took her." Peter sighed, rubbing his temples. "It's probably just a clerical error, honey." Naomi shook her head vehemently. "What if it's not? What if those 30 minutes are the key to everything?" The next day, Naomi returned to St. Catherine's Hospital, her heart pounding as she approached the administration offices. The receptionist recognized her immediately, her smile faltering. "Mrs. Parker, do you have an appointment?" "I need to speak with someone about my records," Naomi replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She was directed to a small conference room where a risk management officer and the head of nursing waited. Their explanations were rehearsed. Clerical errors happened, especially during emergencies like power outages. They were terribly sorry for her loss, but there was nothing more they could tell her. As Naomi left defeated, a voice called out to her near the staff elevator. "Mrs. Parker?" A young orderly with kind eyes glanced around nervously before pressing a folded note into her hand. "You didn't get this from me," he whispered, before disappearing through a door marked "Staff Only." In her car, Naomi unfolded the note with trembling fingers. Scrawled in hasty handwriting was a name and address: Patricia Quinn, 1456 Elm Street, Carmel, IN. Beneath it, a single sentence: she was on duty that night and quit the next day. Patricia Quinn lived in a modest ranch house in Carmel, a suburb north of Indianapolis. Naomi sat in her car across the street, watching as a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and graying hair tended to flowers in the front yard. Gathering her courage, Naomi approached. "Miss Quinn, my name is Naomi Parker. I believe you were working at St. Catherine's the night my baby disappeared." Patricia's face drained of color. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, already retreating toward her front door. "Please," Naomi begged, "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to understand what happened to my daughter." Something in Naomi's voice must have resonated with Patricia, who hesitated before gesturing for her to come inside. The living room was cluttered but clean, with framed nursing certificates hanging on the walls. I can't help you, Patricia said once they were seated, though her eyes betrayed her. I wasn't even near the nursery that night. Then why did you quit the next day? After 15 years? Naomi pressed, watching Patricia's hands fidget with the tissue. Sometimes coincidences are just coincidences, Patricia replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Naomi leaned forward. My daughter is out there somewhere. I can feel it. Please, if you know anything. Patricia closed her eyes, her internal struggle evident on her face. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know what happened to your baby, but that night, things weren't right. She described unusual activity in the hospital's private wing, security guards she'd never seen before, and whispered conversations about a VIP patient with extraordinary needs. There was talk about a baby with a rare blood condition, one that needed specialized equipment brought in just for that night. Patricia's eyes met Naomi's. I've said too much already. You need to be careful. These are powerful people you're dealing with. As Naomi drove home, her mind raced with possibilities. A VIP patient, a rare blood condition. Could her Olivia have had some medical issue the hospital hadn't disclosed? Was this all some horrible mistake or something more sinister? When she shared Patricia's information with Peter that evening, his reaction surprised her. Do you hear? Yourself, he asked, his voice rising. Secret VIPs, rare blood conditions? You're starting to sound like a conspiracy theorist. None were permitted to view the bodies before cremation, which the hospital handled as a courtesy. Naomi's hand shook as she opened the file. Why hasn't this been investigated? Quentin's laugh was bitter. Midwest Health employs half the city and donates millions to political campaigns. Nobody wants to rock that boat. As they parted ways, Quentin warned her to be careful. These people play hardball, Naomi. If they think you're getting close to something, he didn't need to finish the sentence. That night, Naomi arrived home, to find Peter standing in the doorway of the office, staring at her investigation wall with horror. What is this? He asked, his voice barely audible. I came home early to surprise you with dinner, and I find this? Naomi tried to explain about Quentin, the other families, the Abernathy Research Institute. But with each word, Peter's expression grew more distant, more afraid, not of the conspiracy she was uncovering, but of her. This has to stop, he said finally. I've been patient, I've given you space to grieve in your own way, but this... He gestured at the wall. This isn't healthy now. His voice broke on her name. I miss you, I miss us, but I can't watch you destroy yourself with these delusions. The word hung between them, sharp as a knife. Delusions. They're not delusions if they're true, Naomi whispered. Peter's ultimatum was delivered through tears. Seek professional help, or he would need space to reconsider their future. As the front door closed behind him, Naomi sank to the floor, surrounded by the evidence of her 3-month investigation. For the first time since that terrible night in June, doubt crept in. What if Peter was right? What if grief had twisted her mind into seeing connections that weren't there? The thought was almost as terrifying as the alternative, that her baby was out there, possibly in danger, while everyone, even her own husband, believed Naomi was losing her mind. She will discover a shocking truth that will test her resolve like never before. How far will a mother go to find the child she knows? In her heart is still alive. The annual Founders' Day celebration in Indianapolis created the perfect cover for Naomi's next move. While families gathered downtown for parades and festivities, she parked across from the Abernathy Research Institute, a gleaming glass structure on the city's affluent north side. Quentin had discovered that the institute specialized in genetic research, particularly rare blood disorders, potentially connecting it to the whispers Patricia Quinn had heard about the VIP patient. After their coffee shop meeting, Quentin had been researching tirelessly, passing information to Naomi through encrypted emails. His latest discovery had sent chills down her spine. An anonymous source claimed the Institute had a partnership with several hospitals to identify newborns with specific genetic markers. For what purpose, no one seemed to know. Surveillance had revealed a loading dock with unusual nighttime activity, but the Institute's security made closer investigation impossible. As Naomi watched the facility from her car, a text from Peter arrived. "Mom says you missed your therapy appointment again. Please call Dr. Matthews." The weekly therapy sessions had been Peter's condition for returning home. Naomi had agreed, desperate to save her marriage, even as she continued her investigation in secret. Dr. Matthews was kind but persistent in her efforts to guide Naomi toward acceptance. Little did the therapist know that each session provided Naomi with new psychological terminology to better hide her ongoing search. A movement near the Institute's service entrance caught her attention. An elderly man in a maintenance uniform exited, lighting a cigarette in the parking lot. Acting. On instinct, Naomi approached him with a friendly smile. "Excuse me, is there a bathroom I could use? My GPS brought me here instead of the medical center, and it's an emergency." The man, Raymond, according to his name tag, hesitated before nodding toward a side door. "Visitor restrooms are just inside to the left. Don't wander, though. Security's in tight since the expansion." Naomi thanked him, filing away this new information. As she returned to her car after using the restroom, Raymond was finishing his cigarette. "You don't look like you need the dialysis center," he observed, his eyes shrewd but not unkind. Something about his expression made Naomi take a chance. "Actually, I'm looking into some research they're doing here about rare blood conditions." Raymond's weathered face revealed nothing, but he checked his watch deliberately. "My shift ends in 20 minutes. There's a diner called Lou's 2 blocks east, best pie in the city." He crushed his cigarette underfoot and disappeared inside before she could respond. At Lou's diner, over slices of cherry pie, Raymond revealed he'd worked maintenance for the Midwest Health Network for 37 years. "Started at Old St. Vincent's before they tore it down, moved to St. Catherine's. Now I'm mostly at Abernathy. I go where they need me." He spoke of changes in recent years, increased security, restricted areas, new protocols. "There's things that don't add up," he admitted, lowering his voice. "Like the old tunnel system, supposed to be sealed off after the renovation, but I still hear the service elevators going down there at night." Naomi's heart raced. "Tunnel system?" Raymond nodded, sketching a crude map on a napkin. "Connects the original hospital building to what's now the research wing. They told everyone it was closed for safety reasons, but I've seen the lights on down there. Whatever they're doing, they don't want regular staff knowing about it." As they parted, Raymond warned her, "Be careful, young lady. I'm retiring next month, so they can't hurt me much, but you've got a lot to lose." What he couldn't know was that Naomi had already lost what mattered most: her child, her marriage, her reputation, her peace. The only thing she had left was her determination to find the truth. Have you ever had a gut feeling so strong that everyone thought you were crazy, but you just couldn't let it go? If you or someone you know has experienced something similar, please share in the comments below. October brought falling leaves and falling temperatures to Indianapolis, but Naomi barely noticed the changing seasons. Her world had narrowed to a single purpose: investigate the tunnel system Raymond had described. Peter had moved back home, but the distance between them remained. He worked late most nights, leaving before Naomi woke in the morning. They exchanged texts about groceries and bills, existing as roommates rather than husband and wife. Naomi maintained her therapy appointments, convincing both Dr. Matthews and Peter that she was making progress toward acceptance. Meanwhile, she and Quentin had developed a tentative plan. Using his press credentials, Quentin would arrange an Official tour of Abernathy Research Institute for a story on medical innovations. Naomi, posing as his photographer, would accompany him. While Quentin distracted their guide with questions, Naomi would slip away to locate the tunnel entrance Raymond had described. It was risky, potentially illegal, but Naomi was beyond caring about consequences. The day of the tour dawned cold and rainy. Naomi's hands trembled as she packed her camera equipment, a convincing but unnecessary prop. Her real tools were hidden in inner pockets. A small flashlight, Raymond's hand-drawn map, and a keycard he'd provided that might still work on the older doors. "This could end badly," Quentin warned as they drove to Abernathy. "If we're caught—" "I know the risks," Naomi interrupted. "But it's been 4 months since Olivia disappeared. The police have given up. My own husband thinks I'm having a breakdown. This might be my last chance to find out what really happened." The tour proceeded as planned. The guide, a polished PR representative, led them through gleaming laboratories and state-of-the-art research facilities, expertly fielding Quentin's questions about gene therapy breakthroughs. At a strategic moment, when the group paused to examine a particularly impressive piece of equipment, Naomi slipped through a door marked "Staff Only." Following Raymond's map, she navigated service corridors until she reached a maintenance elevator hidden behind a supply closet. The keycard worked, and Naomi's heart pounded as the elevator descended to a level not marked on any official building plans. The doors opened to reveal a dimly lit corridor that smelled of antiseptic and something else, something institutional and vaguely familiar. Moving silently, Naomi followed the tunnel, which gradually changed from modern construction to older. Brick and concrete, motion-activated lights flickered on as she progressed, revealing a path that had clearly seen recent use despite its official closure. The tunnel ended at a heavy steel door with a modern security panel, incongruous against the aged walls. This was it, the connection to what Raymond believed was a secret research facility, but without the proper credentials, Naomi could go no further. Quickly she photographed everything, the door, the security panel, the tunnel itself, before retracing her steps. She had just reached the maintenance elevator when voices echoed from around the corner. Ducking into a janitorial closet, Naomi held her breath as 2 lab-coated researchers passed, deep in conversation about promising results from Subject 17B and genetic markers responding to the new protocol. When she finally rejoined the tour group, Quentin's relief was palpable. "I was about to create a diversion," he whispered. "Find anything?" Naomi nodded slightly, her mind still processing what she'd seen and heard. That night, as Naomi uploaded her photographs to her laptop, a knock at the office door startled her. Peter stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "I thought you were working on lesson plans," he said quietly, eyeing the tunnel photos on her screen. "For your return to teaching next semester." The lie died on Naomi's lips. She was tired of pretending, tired of being treated like she was, fragile or delusional. "I found something today," she said instead, "evidence that St. Catherine's is connected to Abernathy Research through an underground tunnel system, the same system that could have been used to transport our daughter during the power outage." Peter's face hardened. "Naomi, please, we've been through this." "No, you've been through acceptance. I've been investigating," Naomi replied, her voice steady. "And I'm close to answers, Peter, real answers about what happened to Olivia." The argument that followed was devastating in its finality. Peter packed a bag while Naomi watched in silence, her heart breaking all over again as he placed his wedding ring on the kitchen counter. "I'll stay with my brother until we figure out next steps," he said, not meeting her eyes. "I can't do this anymore now. I can't watch you choose this obsession over our life together." After he left, Naomi wept for all she had lost and all she might never find. But as dawn broke over Indianapolis, she returned to her laptop with renewed determination. If the world thought her crazy for refusing to give up on her child, so be it. She would gladly be the madwoman, the conspiracy theorist, the cautionary tale if it meant discovering the truth. Time was running out. Quentin had warned her that his editor was growing impatient with his Abernathy investigation, and without his press access, Naomi would lose her best chance at infiltrating the research facility again. You won't believe what's waiting for her. Behind that mysterious door, is she getting closer to finding Olivia, or is she walking straight into danger? The anonymous package arrived on the first truly cold day of November, left on Naomi's doorstep without a shipping label or return address. Inside the padded envelope was a hospital bracelet, tiny, designed for a newborn's wrist, identical to the one that should have been on Olivia's arm. Naomi's vision blurred as she examined it, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped the small plastic band. The name field was blank, but a series of numbers and letters were printed along one edge. AB17RHN. Also inside the envelope was a card with an address in Columbus, Ohio, just under 2 hours away. No note, no explanation, just the address and a date, tomorrow. Naomi called Quentin immediately, but her call went to voicemail. Later that day, she learned why. The journalist had been suddenly reassigned to cover a story in Alaska. His editor was apologetic but firm when Naomi called the newspaper. "These decisions come from above my pay grade," she explained. "Quentin's environmental reporting is being recognized with this special assignment. It's quite an honor." The message was clear. Their investigation had triggered enough concern to have Quentin effectively removed from Indianapolis. Naomi was on her own now. The address in Columbus led to the Linwood Children's Medical Center, a modern facility specializing in pediatric care. With no press credentials and no plan, Naomi walked through the front doors the next morning, her heart pounding. At the information desk, she improvised. "I'm here to see my niece," she told the receptionist. "My sister said she was in the special care unit." The woman directed her to the 4th floor, where Naomi wandered the hallways, looking for anything connected to the code on the bracelet. A door marked Specialized Treatment Wing, authorized personnel only, caught her attention. Through its small window, Naomi glimpsed a nursery setup, unlike any she'd seen before. Individual rooms with state-of-the-art monitoring equipment surrounding small cribs. As a nurse exited, Naomi caught a brief glimpse of the children inside. One infant in particular made her freeze. A baby girl, perhaps 5 months old, with a distinctive strawberry birthmark at the hairline, identical to the one Olivia had been born with. Naomi nearly collapsed, steadying herself against the wall as the nurse gave her a concerned look. "Are you all right, ma'am?" "Yes," Naomi managed, "just a little lightheaded. Could you tell me about this unit? My niece might be transferred here." The nurse's expression turned guarded. "This is a specialized research treatment program. Patients are admitted by physician referral only." Before Naomi could press further, a security guard approached, politely but firmly asking for her visitor's badge. Having none, Naomi was escorted to the exit, her mind racing with what she'd seen. The baby with the strawberry birthmark couldn't be a coincidence. After months of searching, Naomi was certain she had found Olivia. December arrived with snow, flurries and holiday decorations throughout Columbus, where Naomi had taken a small, furnished apartment using the last of her savings. Her plan was both desperate and determined: secure a position at Linwood Children's Medical Center to gain access to the specialized treatment wing. Using her background in science education and a carefully constructed resume that emphasized her laboratory experience from college, Naomi applied for every open position remotely connected to the treatment program. When an administrative opening in the research division appeared, she pounced, presenting herself as an eager candidate with relevant skills and no complicated ties to the Columbus area. The gamble paid off. 2 weeks before Christmas, Naomi began orientation as a new administrative assistant in the division overseeing the specialized treatment wing. The security protocols were intense: fingerprinting, background checks, multiple non-disclosure agreements. Naomi signed everything with a steady hand, knowing that she was crossing lines that could result in criminal charges. But each time doubt crept in, she remembered the baby with the strawberry birthmark. If that child was Olivia, nothing else mattered. Naomi's direct supervisor was Dr. Sandra Reynolds, a serious woman in her 50s who ran the department with military precision. "The work we do here is revolutionary," Dr. Reynolds explained during orientation. "We're treating previously untreatable genetic conditions, giving these children a chance at life, but that means absolute confidentiality and adherence to protocols." The administrative role gave Naomi access to patient files, though the most sensitive information was compartmentalized. Each child in the program had a unique identifier rather than a name, and Naomi quickly discovered that AB17RHN matched the strawberry birthmarked baby she believed was Olivia. The child had been diagnosed with Reardon-Huxley syndrome, a rare genetic condition that affected blood cell development. Without the experimental treatment being pioneered at Linwood, the prognosis was grim. Naomi spent her lunch breaks observing the nursery from permitted areas, her heart aching each time she glimpsed the baby. The child was thriving under the specialized care, alert, responsive, clearly well-tended. Whatever was happening at Linwood, it wasn't harming the children. This realization brought complicated emotions. If this was Olivia, she was receiving treatment that might be saving her life, treatment she might not have received otherwise. As Christmas approached, Naomi finally found what she'd been searching for: an admission record linking AB17RHN to St. Catherine's Hospital in Indianapolis, transferred during a severe storm in June. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. Olivia had been born with a rare genetic condition that the hospital had detected during routine newborn screening. Rather than informing Naomi and Peter, someone had made the decision to transfer her to the research program, using the power outage as cover for the baby's disappearance. It was unethical, illegal, and unforgivable, but from the perspective of the medical researchers, potentially justified by the life-saving treatment they could provide. The revelation left Naomi reeling. Her instincts had been right all along. Olivia was alive, but exposing the truth could jeopardize the treatment, keeping her daughter healthy. As she grappled with this impossible dilemma, Naomi noticed Dr. Reynolds watching her with increasing suspicion. Had she been too obvious in her interest in AB17RHN? Had her background check revealed something concerning? Naomi knew she needed to move quickly, but she couldn't risk removing Olivia from medical care she might desperately need. The solution came from an unexpected source. One evening, as Naomi worked late organizing research protocols, Dr. Reynolds returned to the office, her eyes red-rimmed. "My grandson would have been 3 months old today," she said quietly, catching Naomi off guard. "He had Reardon-Huxley syndrome too, diagnosed at birth at Mercy Hospital in Cincinnati." Naomi's pulse quickened. "What happened?" "They told my daughter he didn't survive the night," Dr. Reynolds replied, her voice bitter. "No body, no funeral, just a death certificate and a bill." The parallel was unmistakable. When I started questioning things, demanding records, seeking second opinions, they stonewalled us. By the time I realized what might have happened, it was too late. The trail was cold. Dr. Reynolds fixed Naomi with a penetrating stare. "I took this job to find answers, Ms. Parker, or should I say, Mrs. Parker from Indianapolis? Naomi froze, her cover blown. How long have you known? Since your background check came back. Strange coincidence. A woman from Indianapolis with a background in science, whose baby supposedly died during a power outage at St. Catherine's, now working in our specialized pediatric unit. Dr. Reynolds' expression softened slightly. I should have reported you immediately, but I recognize that look in your eyes. It's the same one I see in the mirror every day. In that moment, Naomi took the biggest risk of her life. She told Dr. Reynolds everything, from the storm that night to her investigation to finding the baby with the strawberry birthmark. When she finished, Dr. Reynolds was silent for a long moment. What you're describing, abducting newborns for research without parental consent, would destroy this entire program if exposed. She held up a hand as Naomi started to speak. But if what you say is true, it needs to be destroyed, or at least reformed from the ground up. Together, they formulated a plan. Dr. Reynolds had connections to the Medical Ethics Board and access to records Naomi couldn't reach. Working in secret, they compiled evidence of multiple cases like Olivia's, babies with rare genetic conditions who had allegedly died but were actually enrolled in the research program. The work was dangerous and delicate. Several times, Naomi nearly ran into hospital administrators who would have recognized her from St. Catherine's. Security protocols were tightened without explanation, making their information gathering more difficult. And all the while, Naomi watched over the baby she now knew with certainty was Olivia, growing stronger every day thanks to the very treatment program they were preparing to expose. The confrontation came on Christmas Eve, when security was minimal and many administrators were away for the holiday. Dr. Reynolds had arranged a meeting with key members of the hospital's ethics committee, along with 2 trusted colleagues from the research program who had expressed private concerns about patient recruitment methods. Naomi's role was to present their evidence, meticulously gathered documentation showing that at least 7 babies, including Olivia, had been taken from their families under false pretenses. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If they failed, Naomi faced potential criminal charges for falsifying her employment credentials and accessing confidential patient information. Dr. Reynolds would likely lose her medical license, and most devastatingly, they might never secure Olivia's return to her family. But if they succeeded, they would expose an unethical research practice while ensuring the affected children continued receiving life-saving treatment, this time with their family's knowledge and consent. The meeting began tensely in a conference room tucked away on the hospital's administrative floor. Dr. Reynolds introduced Naomi not as her assistant, but as a mother whose child was taken for our program without consent. Shocked faces turned to Naomi as she calmly presented their findings: the pattern of convenient deaths during hospital emergencies, the coded patient identifiers that matched missing infants, the financial arrangements with participating hospitals. "I'm not here to shut down your research," Naomi clarified as murmurs filled the room. "The treatment you're providing is saving lives, including my daughter's, but it must not come at the cost of informed consent and family bonds." The debate that followed was heated. Some researchers defended the program's methods, arguing that parents might refuse potentially life-saving experimental treatments out of fear or misunderstanding. Others were horrified to learn the full recruitment practices, having been told the infants were legally obtained with consent. The ethics committee members were unequivocal. Regardless of medical benefit, the program as structured was fundamentally unethical and potentially criminal. "These children have been legally declared dead," the head of the committee pointed out. "Their parents have mourned them. And all the while they've been here, receiving treatment but deprived of their families. This isn't just unethical, it's cruel." By evening's end, a tentative agreement had been reached. The program would continue, but with immediate reforms. All affected families would be notified, legal guardianship would be properly established, and criminal investigation of those who had orchestrated the deceptions would proceed. For Naomi, only one thing mattered: the promise that she could take Olivia home once transition plans for her continued treatment were established. As snow fell outside the conference room windows, Naomi finally allowed herself to believe that their ordeal might be nearing its end. But one question remained unanswered. Who had sent the anonymous package with Olivia's hospital bracelet and the address of Linwood Medical Center? When Naomi posed this question to Dr. Reynolds later, the older woman smiled enigmatically. "Let's just say you're not the only parent who recognized a birthmark and started asking questions." The revelation that they had unknowing allies, other parents or medical staff who had recognized the wrong being done, filled Naomi with renewed hope for justice. As she left the hospital that night, she called Peter for the first time in weeks. When his voicemail answered, she left a simple message. "I found her, Peter. I found our daughter. She's alive and she's coming home." The new year brought sweeping changes to the specialized treatment program at Linwood Children's Medical Center. Under the watchful eye of the Medical Ethics Committee and newly appointed Oversight Board, researchers contacted the families of all 7 children who had been wrongfully taken. The revelations prompted investigations at 3 hospitals across the Midwest, including St. Catherine's in Indianapolis. For most families, the news that their children were alive came as a shock that transformed into jubilation, then determination, to be reunited despite the complex medical needs involved. The program itself was restructured to continue its groundbreaking treatment while ensuring proper consent and family involvement, ironically resulting in additional funding as more families willingly enrolled their children once the process was transparent. For Naomi, January became a crash course in Reardon-Huxley syndrome. She worked with Dr. Reynolds and Olivia's treatment team to understand the specialized care her daughter would need. The genetic condition, while serious, was manageable with ongoing treatment that could now be provided while Olivia lived at home with her family. Throughout this time, Naomi continued reaching out to Peter, sending updates and photographs of the daughter he still believed was gone. His initial responses were skeptical, even angry, accusing Naomi of prolonging her delusion and fabricating evidence. But as official documents arrived, confirming Olivia's status and the criminal investigation into the hospital's actions made local headlines, his disbelief gradually transformed. Their first reunion was awkward, tense with unspoken recriminations and grief. Peter stood in the doorway of Naomi's Columbus apartment, his face ashen as he looked at the photographs and medical records spread across her coffee table. "I don't understand," he whispered. "How could this happen? How could an entire hospital lie about our baby dying?" "Not the entire hospital," Naomi clarified. "A few key people in positions of power, motivated by what they believed was a greater good, saving children with rare conditions through experimental treatments. The power outage created an opportunity they seized without considering the devastation it would cause." As Peter absorbed this reality, anger replaced his shock. "They let us believe our child was dead for 7 months. They watched us grieve, suffer, fall apart." His voice broke. "And all that time you knew she was out there." "I didn't know," Naomi corrected gently. "I hoped, I believed, but I didn't have proof until November." The pain in Peter's eyes was almost unbearable. "You were right, and I gave up. I thought you were unwell, that you needed to accept reality, when all along you were trying to protect me," Naomi finished for him. "You were doing what you thought was best, based on what we were told. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding, a foundation they could potentially rebuild upon." The true healing began the next day, when Peter met Olivia for the first time. Naomi watched as he approached the crib where their daughter lay, now 7 months old and thriving despite her condition. The moment he saw the strawberry birthmark at her hairline, identical to the one in the single photograph they'd taken in the delivery room before she was whisked away, his composure shattered. "It's really her," he breathed, tears streaming down his face as Olivia gripped his finger with surprising strength. "Our daughter." By early February, the necessary arrangements were in place. Olivia would continue her treatment regimen, but as an outpatient, living at home with her parents. Naomi and Peter had decided to stay in Indianapolis, close to their support network, but far enough from St. Catherine's Hospital to avoid painful reminders. Their suburban home, once filled with grief and tension, was transformed. The nursery redecorated to suit a 7-month-old rather than a newborn, medical equipment discreetly incorporated into the decor, and most importantly, filled with the sounds of their daughter's laughter and cries. The journey home was emotional for everyone involved. Dr. Reynolds, who had become both mentor and friend to Naomi, came to say goodbye to her smallest patient and to meet Peter. "What you did was incredibly brave," she told them both. "And it's already changing lives. 3 more families have been reunited with their children since January." As they prepared to leave, Naomi noticed a small package on Olivia's travel crib, a stuffed elephant with a note attached. "For Olivia, who, like this elephant, never forgets those who love her. May your future be filled with joy and truth." PQ, Patricia Quinn, the nurse whose reluctant revelations had been the first real lead in Naomi's search, had been following their story from afar. 1 year after the storm that had changed everything, Naomi stood in Olivia's bedroom, watching her daughter sleep peacefully in her crib. The specialized medical equipment monitoring her condition hummed quietly in the background, a reminder of both the challenges they still faced and the miracle of having her home at all. Peter joined her, slipping an arm around her waist as they observed their child together. "I still have nightmares," he admitted quietly, "that we never found her, that I convinced you to give up looking." Naomi leaned into his embrace. "And I dream that I'm still searching, that no one believes me, that I'm alone in knowing she's out there somewhere." They had begun rebuilding their marriage, attending counseling together to process the trauma they'd each experienced in different ways. Some days were easier than others. Trust, once broken, healed slowly. But they were united in their love for Olivia and their determination to give her the best possible life, whatever challenges her condition might bring. The investigation into what the media had dubbed the Midwest medical conspiracy continued, with indictments against hospital administrators and research directors who had orchestrated the deceptions. Naomi had testified before grand juries and medical boards, her science teacher's precision making her a devastatingly effective witness. Her advocacy had expanded beyond her own case, working with other affected families to ensure their voices were heard and their children received proper care. As she turned away from the crib, Naomi caught sight of her reflection in the nursery mirror, a woman transformed by grief, determination, and ultimately vindication. The doubts others had cast on her sanity, the isolation she had endured, the marriage she had nearly lost, all painful chapters in a story that had led to this moment, her family whole again, stronger for having been broken. Outside, another February storm was brewing, thunder rumbling in the distance, but this time Naomi felt no fear, only gratitude for the calm at the center of her once turbulent world, a sleeping baby with a strawberry birthmark, home where she belonged. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.